The superhero ban in The Incredibles has always been treated as this unfortunate but understandable outcome. Heroes mess up, people get hurt, lawsuits happen, and eventually the government steps in. And I get why that works as a story, but the more you think about it, the less sense it actually makes. Because when you look at who's being blamed, who's still causing the damage, and what society is left with after the ban, the whole thing starts to feel backwards. So this isn't me saying the writers didn't know what they were doing. This is just me taking the premise seriously and asking whether the outlawing of superheroes in The Incredibles actually works when you treat it like a real decision in that world. And the first problem starts with who the ban is actually targeting. The basis of the ban is unfair, and obviously so. Superheroes aren't perfect in handling crime. There will be mistakes, and people will get hurt no matter what. But that will always be the fault of the bad guys who caused the crimes. So why do the superheroes get blamed? If a police officer stops a villain's attack, but there were some casualties, does the government just ban the police? So why is the same logic not applied for both superheroes and the police? And secondly, in context, it makes even less sense. If you've seen The Incredibles, you know that the acts of Mr. Incredible that night was one of the main motivators to ban the superheroes. But if you look at what happened, this isn't a misunderstanding from the perspective of the citizens and the government. Whichever way you look at it, the outlaw of superheroes is unjustified. So one of the first acts that got controversy was Mr. Incredible saving a guy from ending himself. The same guy then goes on to sue him, and it's implied that he does so successfully. And I realize that this part specifically is satire, as there are real-world examples for people being sued for helping other people, so it's pointing out the absurdity in a way. But it does have real-world effect within the Incredibles universe. And me saying it doesn't make sense is not me saying there's no reason for it. And so the next occurrence is Mr. Incredible saving Syndrome as a kid from a bomb which ended up blowing a bridge, in which Mr. Incredible had to stop an incoming train with his bare hands. And people on the train got injured, and then they all sued. And of course, for some reason, Mr. Incredible couldn't just give his own account of the events, but this opened the gates for more heroes to get sued or villainized, and that cost the government money, and that led to the ban. Now the other question is, why do they have all this anger for the heroes and not the villains? I mean, sure, they can ban the heroes if they don't comply, but villains don't comply. If superpowered or enhanced heroes exist in the universe, then their villain counterparts exist as well. So what was the plan for them? Like, what if the Underminer carried out his plans with no interference from the Incredibles? He would have hurt an absurd amount of people, and he would have robbed the bank successfully. And we see that the police showed up basically way too long after the attack began, which is more than enough time for him to get away. What would the citizens and government have done then? And you have to understand that this would have been happening since the ban took place. Supervillains would have been causing chaos, and superheroes wouldn't have been interfering. How did that sustain? The ban would have made more sense if the government had ways to deal with superpowered criminals, like maybe superpowered weapons from people like Edna, or enrolling superpowered individuals into the police force who act by the law, but none of this is implied in the movie. Syndrome had an entire island to himself. Who knows what else he might have done with his resources? And the government and the police seem to be mind-numbingly incompetent, and everyone just plays along. Another thing to consider is the screenslaver, or Evelyn Dever, and she's an example of why I don't think the superhero ban was as exaggerated. And I think they were actually trying to ground the dilemma in real-life circumstances. And as much as I love The Incredibles 2, I see why people have a problem with her motivations, because they're pretty weak. I mean, Syndrome's motivation in Incredibles 1 were also weak, but he was a kid and didn't understand the situation, and couldn't see from Mr. Incredible's perspective. So his descent to evil is permissible, but in this case, not so much. Evelyn's parents depended on superheroes instead of keeping themselves safe, and on one hand, it's their fault for not protecting themselves. But on the other hand, when they called the superheroes, they didn't arrive because they had just been banned, not because they were incompetent. And I'm not saying they can't be incompetent, but in that case, it wasn't the fault of the superheroes that they were banned. So Evelyn had misdirected anger, and it's not surprising that many people protested against superheroes if we assume everyone was like her. And get this, notice how when the superheroes were so competent that it was obvious that they were the heroes in that situation. The ban was immediately lifted. They saved the day, they captured the bad guys, and there were seemingly no casualties, so it made no sense not to legalize them. But I wonder why this wasn't the case at the end of the first movie. Did witness accounts just not exist back then? They could have just marched to the court at the end of the first movie, exposed Syndrome's island and his plans, and along with the goodwill they had from saving the day, they should have been legalized from the very first movie. But you could argue that Elastigirl's campaign was necessary to win over the people, and I'm not mad at it. I thought it was interesting, plus the people are just dumb. The main problem I've identified with this is the overdependence of regular people on superheroes. Everyone had so much faith in superheroes and expected them to be perfect, such that when they weren't, it was seen as some kind of betrayal. So every time the superheroes didn't save them, or even when they did save them but they didn't want to be saved, they didn't blame what put them in danger. They only blame the heroes. It's kind of like the thing where Joker kills someone, but people put the blame on Batman for not killing the Joker when it's still Joker doing the killing. They put the heroes on such a pedestal like gods, and every time the heroes saved them, they cheered and it was seen as normal. But when they couldn't save them, from their perspective, they were redundant, hence the ban.
We might be able to nab him if we set up a perimeter.
You mean he got away?
Well, listen, I've got to be somewhere.
What about Bon Voyage?
Any other night I'd go after him myself, but I've really got to go.
Look at how the police officers act like they aren't just as responsible for catching Bon Voyage as Mr. Incredible is. Now, of course, this overdependence and entitlement is entirely on the citizens and the government, and not the fault of the superheroes whatsoever. But it led to the banning of the superheroes with no alternative. Now, I'm not saying the writers didn't know what they were doing. The Incredibles and its essence is much more than the politics of it. I'm just pointing out the sheer absurdity of the situation and how little sense it makes when taken literally. The Sokovia Accords in Avengers is a much more practical and nuanced approach to this law. That isn't satire, and this is. Except maybe in the second movie, I think they were deadass. Anyways, give me your thoughts on the outlaw of superheroes in The Incredibles, and your thoughts on anything I've said in this video. I would love to hear other opinions, and I'll see you in the next one, so bye till then.